There is a hidden reason some people seem to accomplish in a few hours what takes others an entire day. It is not always intelligence, it is not endless motivation, and it is definitely not because they have discovered some magical morning routine. The real difference is much more uncomfortable. Highly productive people have learned to protect one of the most valuable resources in the human mind: attention. While most people spend their day reacting to notifications, messages, random thoughts, unnecessary decisions, and small tasks that create the feeling of progress, productive people are much more selective about what receives their mental energy, and this changes everything. Because productivity is not simply about how much work you can do, it is about how much meaningful work you can produce before your attention gets divided into pieces. Your brain can only focus deeply on a limited amount of information at one time. Yet modern life constantly encourages you to switch. One minute you are working, the next minute you check your phone, then you answer a message, then you open another tab, then you remember another task, then you return to your original work and wonder why it suddenly feels harder. Each interruption may look harmless, but repeated attention switching can create a serious psychological cost. This is why a person can sit at a desk for 8 hours and still feel like they barely accomplished anything. They were active, but they were not necessarily productive. And that difference is where this entire video begins. In this video, you are going to learn the psychology behind people who seem unusually productive, without constantly running on motivation. You will discover why starting a task can feel harder than actually doing it, why your environment can influence your behavior more than your willpower, why multitasking often creates the illusion of efficiency, and how highly productive people reduce the number of decisions their brain has to make throughout the day. We will also explore a powerful psychological strategy known as implementation intentions, where you create specific if-then rules that make action easier to trigger. You will see why telling yourself "I need to work harder" may be far less useful than deciding exactly when, where, and how you will begin. But there is another side to productivity that most advice completely ignores. Sometimes becoming more productive does not require adding another habit to your life. It requires removing something. Removing distractions, removing unnecessary commitments, removing constant decision-making. Removing the easy escape routes that allow your brain to choose comfort whenever the work becomes difficult. And this is where productivity starts to feel almost unfair. Because while everyone else is trying to squeeze more tasks into their day, you may discover that the secret is to make your day contain fewer things that actually matter. By the end of this video, you will understand why discipline alone is not enough, why motivation cannot be your main system, and why the most productive people often appear calm, rather than constantly busy. More importantly, you will learn how to think about productivity differently. Not as a race to complete everything, but as a psychological skill built around attention, environment, clarity, and consistent action. And stay until the end, because the final idea changes the entire meaning of being productive. It is not about becoming a machine that works without stopping. It is about becoming so selective with your time and attention that your results begin to look almost impossible compared with the amount of effort people see. But before we uncover that system, we need to expose the first trap. The one that keeps millions of people busy every single day, while quietly stealing their real progress. Welcome to our channel, and if you want to understand the psychology behind human behavior, discipline, productivity, and personal growth, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. Because once you understand what your mind is doing behind the scenes, you may never look at productivity the same way again. The most dangerous productivity trap is not laziness. It is the feeling that you are being productive when you are actually moving nowhere. This is why someone can wake up early, sit at a desk for 8 hours, answer dozens of messages, clear their inbox, organize their files, create a perfect to-do list, watch educational videos, research new ideas, plan the next week, and still go to bed with the uncomfortable feeling that nothing important really happened. Their day was full, their mind was busy, their hands were moving. But their life did not move forward at the same speed. This is the difference between activity and progress, and understanding it can completely change the way you work. Activity is anything that keeps you occupied. Progress is anything that moves an important goal closer to reality. Those two things can look almost identical from the outside, which is what makes the trap so powerful. You can spend 30 minutes answering emails and feel accomplished because your inbox looks cleaner. You can spend another 30 minutes organizing your computer and feel even better because everything now has a neat folder. You can make a detailed list for tomorrow and experience another small feeling of control. But none of these things necessarily creates the result you actually want. The brain is surprisingly good at rewarding us for completing small tasks, even when those tasks are not the tasks that matter most. There is a psychological comfort in checking something off. It gives you evidence that you did something. And when the real task is difficult, uncertain, or emotionally uncomfortable, small tasks become extremely attractive. They give you a quick win without forcing you to face the difficult part. That is why a person who needs to write an important report suddenly becomes interested in cleaning their desk. Someone who needs to study suddenly decides that their notes need to be reorganized. Someone who needs to build a business suddenly spends an hour researching productivity systems. The brain finds a way to remain busy while avoiding the exact activity that creates the most resistance. And this is where you need to become suspicious of your own productivity. The question is not, what did I do today? The better question is, what did I do today that actually changed something? That one question separates movement from progress. It forces you to look beyond the number of tasks completed and toward the value of the outcome. A person can complete 20 small tasks and accomplish less than someone who completes one important task. That sounds obvious, but daily life constantly teaches us the opposite. Notifications tell us what deserves attention. Emails create artificial urgency. Other people's requests enter our schedules. Social media provides endless opportunities to react, and suddenly the day becomes a collection of other people's priorities. You feel productive because you are responding to things all day. But responsiveness is not the same as progress. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is ignore something that could easily consume your attention. This leads to the first major rule. Stop making your brain decide everything. Every day contains hundreds of tiny decisions. When will I start? What should I work on first? Should I check my phone? Should I answer this message? Should I take a break? Should I continue this task? Should I switch to something easier? Should I research a little more before beginning? Each decision may look insignificant, but together they create mental friction. You are not only doing the work, you are repeatedly deciding whether you should do the work. That second job can quietly drain your attention. This is one reason routines can feel so powerful. A routine removes negotiation. You do not wake up and spend 20 minutes debating whether brushing your teeth is worth doing. The behavior has already been decided. There is no emotional discussion. You simply do it. Productive systems try to create the same kind of automaticity around important work. Instead of asking yourself every morning what you should do, decide beforehand. Instead of waiting until you feel motivated, create a rule. If it is 9 in the morning, I begin my most important task. If I finish breakfast, I open the document. If I sit at my desk, my phone goes away. If I feel the urge to check social media, I finish the next small part first. These are examples of what psychologists call implementation intentions. The basic structure is simple. If a specific situation happens, then a specific action follows. Research has examined this strategy extensively, including a large meta-analysis finding that implementation intentions can improve goal attainment. The interesting part is not the wording itself. The deeper idea is that you are moving the decision from the moment of temptation to a moment when your mind is calmer. You decide before the emotional battle begins. This matters because the version of you making a plan at night is often very different from the version of you sitting at the desk the next morning. At night, you may feel ambitious. You imagine waking up early and working for hours. You promise yourself that tomorrow will be different. But when tomorrow arrives, the task is suddenly less exciting. Your phone is nearby. Your bed is comfortable. The work feels difficult. And now you are asking your tired brain to make a decision that your ambitious brain made yesterday. That is where many plans collapse. The solution is not always stronger willpower. Sometimes the solution is fewer decisions. Make the rule before you need it. Decide what happens next so you do not have to negotiate with yourself every time. This is also why highly productive people can appear unusually disciplined. They may not be fighting temptation every minute. They may have designed their environment and routines so there are fewer temptations to fight. They have reduced the number of moments where discipline is required. That is a very different way of thinking about self-control. Instead of constantly asking, how can I become stronger? Ask, how can I make the right action easier? That question changes the entire system. And once you stop making your brain decide everything, you face another psychological barrier that destroys productivity before the work even begins: starting. Starting is often more difficult than continuing. A large task creates psychological weight. Finish the project sounds enormous. Write the report sounds vague. Study everything sounds almost impossible. Your brain sees a huge mountain and immediately starts looking for a smaller hill. That is why the beginning of difficult work can produce such strong resistance. You have not even started yet, but you already feel tired. The task is demanding energy before you have taken the first step. So instead of giving your brain a giant command, give it a tiny one. Do not tell yourself, I have to finish this project. Tell yourself, open the document. Then, write the first paragraph. Or, work for 5 minutes. The goal is not to trick yourself. The goal is to reduce the psychological cost of beginning. Once action starts, resistance often changes. The task that looked enormous from a distance becomes more concrete when you are actually inside it. A blank page becomes a paragraph becomes a page becomes several pages. The hardest part was not necessarily the entire task. It was crossing the distance between intention and action. This is why small starting commands can be so powerful. They turn an abstract goal into an immediate behavior. And there is an important distinction here. Starting small does not mean thinking small. You can have a huge goal while giving yourself a tiny first action. The mistake is believing that every large goal requires a large emotional state before you can begin. It does not. You do not need to feel inspired before opening the document. You do not need confidence before starting the workout. You do not need perfect concentration before reading the first page. Action can come before motivation. In many cases, action creates the motivation that people were waiting for. This is where productivity becomes less about emotion and more about behavior. You stop asking, do I feel ready? And start asking, what is the next physical action? That question is far more useful because it gives the brain something concrete to do. But even if you learn to start quickly, another problem can destroy everything. Your attention can be stolen almost instantly. This is where modern productivity becomes a battle over attention. Your attention is constantly being invited somewhere else. A notification appears, a message arrives, a new video becomes available, an email enters your inbox, a new headline catches your eye, someone wants a response, another idea enters your mind. The problem is not that any one interruption is catastrophic. The problem is that your brain has to repeatedly move between contexts. You were writing, then you checked your phone, then you returned to writing, then you remembered an email, then you opened your inbox, then you saw another message, then you returned to the document and had to remember where you were. That process has a cost. Research on multitasking and task switching has repeatedly shown that switching between demanding tasks can reduce efficiency and create cognitive costs. The brain does not simply teleport from one task to another without consequence. It has to reorient. It has to retrieve the relevant information. It has to rebuild the mental context. And this is one reason a person can feel exhausted after a day of doing everything without producing much. Their attention was constantly being fragmented. Think of attention like money. If you spend a small amount in 50 different places, you may have nothing left for the one thing that matters most. Productive people therefore do not only manage time, they manage access to their attention. They become careful about what gets permission to interrupt them. This is why one of the strongest productivity questions is not, how can I fit more into my day? It is, what can I remove from my day? That question feels almost backwards in a culture obsessed with optimization. People want more apps, more habits, more systems, more techniques, more routines, more goals. But every additional system can become another thing to maintain. Sometimes productivity improves when the number of things decreases, fewer notifications, fewer open tabs, fewer unnecessary meetings, fewer random commitments, fewer decisions, fewer priorities. The result can feel strange at first because doing less can look like laziness from the outside. But the goal is not to do less for the sake of doing less. The goal is to create enough uninterrupted attention for meaningful work. This brings us to another myth, multitasking. Modern life has made multitasking look like a superpower. Someone answers messages while watching a lecture. They listen to a meeting while checking email. They work on a document while keeping social media open in another tab. They believe they are maximizing every second. But there is a hidden problem. Your brain may be doing less simultaneous deep work than you think. In many cases, what feels like multitasking is actually rapid switching. You are not deeply processing 5 things at the same time. You are repeatedly moving your attention from one thing to another, and every movement carries a cost. This is why a simple productivity rule can be so powerful. One priority, one block, one target. Not work on my business. That is too vague. Instead, write the first section. Not study. Instead, complete 20 pages. Not work on my project. Instead, finish the presentation outline. Specificity reduces ambiguity. When the target is unclear, your brain has to decide what success looks like, while you are already working. That creates friction. When the target is clear, the brain has a finish line. You know what you are trying to accomplish. This also makes it easier to recognize when you are drifting. If your goal is work on something important, almost anything can qualify. If your goal is write 5 pages, checking your inbox clearly does not count. The clearer the target, the harder it becomes to fool yourself. And this is where deadlines enter the picture. An unlimited amount of time can create a strange psychological effect. When there is no clear boundary, a task can expand. You may keep researching, keep editing, keep preparing, keep improving, keep telling yourself that you need more time. A defined time window changes the mental environment. Instead of saying, I will work on this today, you can say, for the next 45 minutes, this is the only thing I am doing. The difference is subtle, but psychologically powerful. You have created a boundary. The boundary forces prioritization. You are no longer asking how much work you can possibly do. You are asking what matters most within the available time. This should not be confused with rushing everything. The goal is not to create constant pressure or unrealistic deadlines. It is to prevent unlimited time from becoming unlimited hesitation. A focused block can make a task feel more concrete, and sometimes the moment you create a boundary, you discover that the work did not actually require as much time as you imagined. You were spending more time deciding, switching, checking, and preparing than actually doing. That discovery can be uncomfortable because it reveals that the biggest obstacle was not always the difficulty of the task. Sometimes it was the structure surrounding the task. And that brings us to one of the most overlooked principles of productivity. Remove the easy escape. Your environment is constantly offering your brain rewards. Your phone is nearby. Entertainment is one tap away. Messages are waiting. Social media never runs out of content. Random information is always available, and when the work becomes difficult, these alternatives become especially attractive. Your brain does not need to make a dramatic decision to escape. It only needs to make a tiny one. I will check this for a second. That second becomes 5 minutes. 5 becomes 15. Then you return to the task and need another few minutes to regain your previous level of focus. This is why relying entirely on willpower is such a weak strategy. Willpower asks you to repeatedly resist something that has been deliberately designed to capture your attention. A better strategy is to create friction around distraction. Put the phone farther away. Close unnecessary tabs. Turn off notifications that are not important. Keep the work you need to do immediately available. Make the productive choice obvious and the distracting choice inconvenient. This is not weakness. It is intelligent environmental design. If you know that a certain distraction repeatedly defeats you, why keep placing it within arm's reach and then blaming yourself for touching it? You would not put a plate of your favorite food directly beside you during a fast and then spend the entire day asking yourself to resist it. The same principle applies to attention. Your environment can either support your intentions or constantly attack them. This is why the question, do I have enough discipline, is sometimes the wrong question. A better question is, what is my environment training me to do? Every time you respond to a notification, you reinforce the habit of checking. Every time you escape difficult work through entertainment, you reinforce the connection between discomfort and distraction. Every time you complete an important task before opening social media, you reinforce a different pattern. Behavior teaches the brain what to expect. And this leads to another major productivity mistake: chasing motivation. Motivation feels powerful because it feels personal. When you are motivated, everything seems easier. You wake up with energy. You make ambitious plans. You feel excited about the future. But motivation is not stable. It rises and falls with sleep, stress, mood, environment, rewards, and countless other factors. If your entire productivity system depends on feeling motivated, your system will work only on the days when your emotions cooperate. That is not reliability. A stronger system allows you to act even when motivation is low. You do not need to hate yourself into productivity. You do not need to become obsessed with discipline. You simply need a structure that makes the next action clear. This is the difference between emotional motivation and behavioral consistency. Motivation says, I feel like doing this. Consistency says, this is what I do now. That distinction is huge. A person who works only when inspired may occasionally produce incredible results. A person who can work consistently without waiting for inspiration can produce results over months and years. And long-term productivity is usually built through repetition, not emotional intensity. This is where identity begins to matter. There is a psychological difference between saying, I am trying to become productive, and saying, I am someone who finishes important things. The first statement describes a temporary project. The second describes a personal standard. Every time you finish a task you promised yourself you would finish, you create evidence for that identity. Every time you keep a commitment, you create evidence. Every time you resist an unnecessary distraction, you create evidence. These small pieces of evidence begin to change how you see yourself. You stop needing to constantly announce that you are disciplined. Your behavior becomes the proof, and that can create a powerful cycle. You act consistently. The action strengthens your identity. The identity makes the action feel more natural. The action becomes easier to repeat. Over time, productivity stops feeling like an emergency project and starts becoming part of your normal behavior. But there is an even deeper idea hiding underneath all of this. The highest level of productivity may not come from adding more powerful habits. It may come from removing everything that competes with the habits and priorities you already know matter. This is the part most productivity advice misses. People keep searching for the perfect system while keeping the same distractions, the same unnecessary commitments, the same endless notifications, and the same vague priorities. They add another planner, another app, another morning routine, another technique, another goal. But the real breakthrough can sometimes happen when you subtract. Remove one unnecessary meeting, remove 1 hour of mindless scrolling, remove 10 meaningless notifications, remove one commitment you accepted out of guilt, remove the habit of checking your phone every few minutes. Remove the need to answer everything immediately. Remove the belief that every opportunity deserves your attention. Suddenly, you have not added more hours to your day. You have simply stopped leaking the hours you already had. And that is where productivity starts to feel almost unfair. Because the person who looks incredibly productive may not actually be working every second. They may simply be spending a much larger percentage of their available attention on things that matter. While one person is constantly switching, another stays with one task. While one person is responding to everything, another protects their priorities. While one person is waiting for motivation, another follows a predetermined rule. While one person is trying to fit more into the day, another is removing what does not deserve space. The difference can become enormous over time. A few minutes of distraction seem harmless today. A few unnecessary decisions seem harmless today. One unfinished task seems harmless today. But repeated for months, these small patterns become a lifestyle. The same is true in the opposite direction. A focused hour today may not transform your life, but hundreds of focused hours can. One completed task may not feel important, but becoming the kind of person who repeatedly completes important tasks can completely change what you are capable of producing. This is why productivity should never be measured only by how busy you look. Busy is visible. Progress is often quiet. Busy people can look impressive because they are constantly moving. Productive people can look surprisingly calm because they know what deserves their attention and what does not. They are not necessarily doing everything. They are protecting the few things that matter most. And once you understand that, productivity stops being a competition to see who can carry the heaviest workload. It becomes a process of deciding what is worth carrying in the first place. The real advantage is not having more things to do. It is having fewer things competing for the same mind. And when your attention finally stops being divided between everything that demands it, the work that truly matters begins to receive something most people rarely give it: your full attention, for long enough to actually produce a result. So, when we say be so productive it feels illegal, the goal was never to turn yourself into a machine that works from morning until midnight. Real productivity is not about destroying your energy, ignoring your health, or sacrificing every peaceful moment just to say you accomplished more. It is about becoming intentional with your attention. It is about knowing what deserves your time, and refusing to let everything else take it. Because the most productive person is not always the busiest person in the room. Sometimes they are the calmest. They simply know what matters, what can wait, and what does not deserve their attention at all. They do not need to chase motivation every morning. They build systems that make action easier. They do not depend on willpower every minute. They design their environment so distractions have fewer opportunities to win. They do not try to do 10 important things at once. They choose one and give it their full attention. And that is where the real advantage begins. You do not need more hours. You need fewer wasted ones. You do not need to become obsessed with doing everything. You need the discipline to ignore what does not move you forward. Because the most productive version of you is not the person who says yes to every task, every message, every request, and every distraction. It is the person who can look at 100 things demanding attention and calmly choose the one thing that truly matters. That kind of productivity can look almost unbelievable from the outside. People may wonder how you are getting so much done, when the truth is that you stopped giving your energy to things that were never important in the first place. So before you leave, remember this: your attention is one of the most valuable things you own. Spend it carefully, protect it fiercely. and give your best focus to the goals that can actually change your life. If this video gave you a new way to think about productivity, make sure you like this video and share it with someone who needs to stop being busy and start making real progress. And if you want more psychology-based videos that help you understand your mind, your habits, and your behavior, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the more you understand how your mind works, the more control you gain over what you do with your time. And remember, you do not need to do everything. You just need to stop wasting your best energy on things that do not matter.